In this lesson, we're going to learn about graphing linear equations using the intercepts. So what are the x and the y intercepts? Well, the x-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So another word for crosses would be to intercept, hence why we have the x-intercept and then the y-intercept. So if I were to label these, this is where the line is crossing. I have the x-axis and I've got the y-axis. Well, where the line is crossing the y-axis, this is the y-intercept. And then where this line is crossing at the x-axis, this is called the x-intercept. So how do I find the intercepts from a graph? Well, first of all, let's start. Remember, this is my x-axis and my y-axis. All right. And so our x-intercept, we could say, is at the point 5, 0. We could also say that it is crossing at the 5. That'd be another way to say it. Now the y-intercept is where the graph is crossing on the y-axis, and that is graphed at 0, 5. And again, we could say that it is at the 5. For number 2, let's do it again. We have the x-intercept. And the x-intercept, we walk over to the 2 and up 0, so it's 2, 0, or we could say 2. And then the y-intercept is crossing at this -3, so we're going 0, -3. And we could say it's crossing at the -3. All right, so then how do I draw the line given the intercepts? So let's say I'm giving that the x-intercept is 5, so I would come over here and I'd plot a 5. And the y-intercept is 4, and so I'm going to plot the 4 on the y-intercept. And then we only need 2 points to graph a line. So I have 2 points here, and then I can just put my line going through those 2 points. So the same thing as if I've got a x-intercept of -1 and I have a y-intercept of 6, I would plot both of those, and then I'm going to have a line that goes through those. All right, before doing example number 3, let's go back and look at example number 1 where we wrote down the coordinates to the graph. Remember that when you have a coordinate, that your x is always first and then you've got your y. And so when we're looking at this x-intercept right here of 5, 0, notice that for the y-intercept, or x-intercept, that this y-coordinate is 0. And then notice for the y-intercept that the x-coordinate is 0. The same thing where you've got the x-intercept for number 2, that when you've got the x-intercept, the y-coordinate is 0, and when you have the y-intercept, that this x-coordinate is 0. So then knowing that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how we are going to graph these using the intercepts. So we know that when you have the x-intercept, that the y-coordinate is 0, and we know when we have the y-intercept that the x-coordinate is 0. So I like to make this little xy table, and it wouldn't matter if we found the y-intercept first and then the x-intercept. It really doesn't matter. But what we're doing then is when we're finding the x-intercept is we're plugging in 0 for y. And so I have 6x plus 3 times 0, and that's going to be equal to 36. So then these cancel out or make 0. So you have 6x is equal to 36, and then I would divide by the 6, and x would be equal to 6. So now let's go ahead and we're going to plug in where you have then the x is going to be 0. So here you'd have 6 times 0 plus 3y, and that's going to be equal to 36. And now 6 times 0 is 0, and we have 3y is equal to 36. I divide by 3, and y was equal to 12. All right, so my y, when x is 0, y is equal to 12. So now we'll take these 2 points and we're going to plot them. These seem a little bit big for that 12, so let's go ahead and just go by 2's. So I'm going to plot the x-intercept. I'm going over 2, 4, 6. All right, so here's my 6, 0. And then we're going to go up again by 2's, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So here's my 12, and this is going to be 0, 12. And now once you have those plotted, you can just draw a line going through them, and you have graphed this equation. All right, number 2, we have 5x minus y is equal to 5. And again, remember, when you're finding the x-intercept, that the y-coordinate is 0, and when you're finding the y-intercept, that the x-coordinate is 0. All right, so what we're doing is we're plugging these numbers then in. And I just make this little XY table just to help kind of organize my data. So I'm going to take, for the first one, 5x minus, I'm going to plug in 0 for the y, is equal to 5. All right, so that kind of goes away, doesn't it? So 5x is equal to 5, and my x is going to be equal to 1. 5 divided by 5 is equal to 1. So I'll have 1, 0. Then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to have 5, and now I'm going to plug in 0 for x. 0 times 0 minus y is equal to 5. All right, 5 times 0 is 0. Now I'm left with a negative y. I don't want a negative y. I'm just going to put a 1 here, because then I'll remember that I can divide by negative 1 on both sides. And y is going to be equal to negative 5. All right, so when I go to graph this, I'm going to have 1, 0. I just graph this right here. And I'm going to have 0, negative 5. And then once you're done plotting the points, then you're going to put the line through, and then you're done graphing. All right, so we changed number 3 to y is equal to negative 5x plus 5. And again, we're looking for the x-intercept and the y-intercept. And remember, when you're plotting, or when you're looking for the x-intercept, the y-coordinate is 0. And when you're looking for the y-intercept, the x-coordinate is 0. So now we're going to plug them in. So I'm going to start with the y is equal to 0. So I have 0 is equal to negative 5x plus 5. Now remember, we have to solve for it. So I'm going to minus my 5 on both sides. And I'll have negative 5 is equal to negative 5x. So now we're going to divide by negative 5. And x is going to be equal to 1. So when y is equal to 0, x is equal to 1. All right, so let's plug it in again. So we're going to have y is equal to, now we're plugging in 0 for x. Negative 5 times 0 plus 5. Well, this goes away, and we have y is equal to 5. So I'm going to have 1, 0, and then 0, 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my coordinate right there. And draw your line through it. So in this lesson, we took a look at how to graph lines using the intercepts.